if you've been leading teams through growth and change and trying to create something from nothing. We're talking about manifestation today. So when you want to bring something forward in your life or in your business, it's not just about putting the vision out there. You also need to do the work to make it happen. A lot of the manifestation world can lean too heavily on the feminine and forget the importance of the masculine. And this is something that's happening in our culture at large at the moment, and why I talk about polarity so much, because it has an impact on the self and also on our broader civilization. In the process of reclaiming the feminine, we need to make sure that we don't discredit the masculine. So we really need both, and we need both within ourselves. I'm Madeline Eliza. Join me to explore female power, embodied leadership, sensuality and spirituality as we weave together ancient and modern, the scientific and the mythic, the erotic and the divine. Hi everybody, welcome to the show. Today we're going to be talking about manifestation, and I really want to weave together a few different perspectives here. A lot of us are immersed in this, what I would call with love, the woo-woo perspective on manifestation, where you kind of dream your life into reality. And I think this has a lot of merit, by the way. I think energy work is really important, but we're going to touch on that because I think that's become very commonplace. We hear a lot about manifestation, or at least in the content that I consume, I read a lot about manifestation, and I want to take it a little bit deeper. From a leadership perspective, I think manifestation is an interesting topic to grapple with, because I work a lot with leaders and teams going through rapid growth and change and bringing visions to life, like going from nothing to something, creating something where there was nothing before. It's a very creative process. It's moving from like the darkness of the void into the green shoots of new life. It is making something manifest that was not there before. And when you are going through rapid growth and change in a team, it forces you to grow personally as well. When you're in the crucible of intense pressure, it's an incredible vehicle for personal growth. And this is what I love about leadership, is that it really forces us to look at our own blocks and wounds and limitations and cast off these shells that don't fit us anymore, so that we can grow into a newer, truer version of self. And so manifestation is at an interesting juncture here of making manifest something that was unmanifest before. I want to spend a bit of time touching on the kind of woo-woo energetic perspective, which is not actually as woo-woo as you might think. We're going to do a little bit of quantum physics today, just to mix it up and bring in a scientific perspective on energy as well. And I want to also speak to organizational psychology and a couple of concepts that I've found really transformative and really like a foundational underpinning of my own work and my understanding of this. I want to talk about polarity in a bit more detail. We've touched on this in other episodes, but I want to crack it open a bit here, because I think it's so relevant to this conversation about creating something from nothing, where you need to have two different sets of skills and two different operating systems harmonized within yourself to be able to do this effectively. And there's lots of different lineages that teach on this subject. So we're going to explore all of that as well. To get started with, if you're, immersed in learning about manifestation, even on the fringes of it, there's so much content and teaching out there at the moment. And I just want to state up front that I really believe that all of this work around elevating your own energy and clearing your own inner blocks and setting a vision for yourself of what you want to achieve and how you want your life to feel, I think all of these practices are really important and really valuable. This is the more a yin side of manifestation, I suppose. I think there's so much wisdom here. And we've had, if I look at my parents' generation, my parents are baby boomers, and their perspective on achieving goals is you just put your head down and you work hard. Time and space are linear. You can't bend time. You just have to put in the hard yards, and then eventually you'll be rewarded. Don't get too big for your boots and don't expect for too much. That's the kind of old school way of thinking about manifestation, I suppose, is it's just hard graft, grunt and grind to get it out. We're in this space now, and it's very much aligned with this soft femme movement that I've been talking about a little bit and really watching with interest, encouraging women to drop out of hustle culture, to dream of a different life for themselves, to fall back into their feminine, like into this soft back body kind of space. Instead of reaching forward and gripping and grasping for that which we want, we get comfortable with sitting back and allowing ourselves to receive. And again, I think there's a lot of wisdom here, and there's a lot of wonderful practices. There's a lot of people teaching practices for manifestation. I'm not going to get into that in this episode today. But the idea of vision is so synonymous with entrepreneurship and creating something from nothing. And every successful business has started with a vision of something that wasn't yet present in the physical reality. So it's all interconnected. A lot of these practices around aligning yourself with the version of self that you want to bring forward into the world, aligning yourself with the way that you would be once you achieve whatever it is that you're trying to manifest. I think there's so much wisdom in this. And often we can feel when we're in periods of growth and change, even if things are uncertain and the ground is shifting beneath our feet, often there's a little very quiet, soft whisper inside, like a little nudge in the direction. And there's a beautiful analogy that you don't need to be able to drive from one side of the continent to the other at night. You don't need to be able to see the whole way. You just need to be able to see the piece of road that your headlights are illuminating. As you progress, you illuminate a little bit more and a little bit more. And when we're in growth and change, I think there's so much wisdom in that analogy, because you don't need to be able to see the whole path. You just need to get really good at listening to those little nudges and those little whispers and those little insights that can come, just pointing us in this direction or that direction. And if you can learn to trust and to pull on that thread and to follow, then the steps appear, the path appears beneath your feet. I really believe that. It sounds woo-woo, but I really have experienced that in my own life. And I think there's a lot of merit in those kind of energetic practices. And this all sounds woo-woo until you look at how quantum physics works. And I know there's a lot of talk now about the quantum reality and jumping timelines and all of this kind of thing. And again, I think there's a lot of merit in this. I just wanted to draw your attention to Einstein's theory of relativity, which was published in 1905 and then revised in 1915. This is over 100 years ago. Hardcore science, right? Like, I'm not going to try and explain the whole thing in detail because I'm not a quantum physicist. But the equation, which we've all heard, E equals mc squared. The E is for energy, the M is for mass, and c squared is the speed of light squared. And the basic meaning of this equation is that energy and mass are the same thing. So if mass is matter, all that is manifest, and energy is all that is unmanifest, it's actually the same thing. So it's like water can turn into steam or into ice when it's subjected to different forces. Energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. So if mass is subject to the right factors, speed of light squared, it will just turn into pure energy. So the whole universe is basically energy, is what Einstein was saying. I didn't understand this until recently, that that's actually what this theory was putting forward. It's totally revolutionary and proves out all of the kind of manifestation practices that are based on an understanding of the universe as a unified field of energy, and that all possible future timelines exist in the present, and it's entirely possible to do these quantum leaps from one timeline to the next. That's kind of extrapolating on the work that Einstein did. It's pretty extraordinary. And I've got a quote here from Einstein I want to read. It followed from the special theory of relativity that mass and energy are both but different manifestations of the same thing, a somewhat unfamiliar conception for the average mind. And he also said, concerning matter, we have been all wrong. What we have called matter is energy, whose vibration has been so lowered as to be perceptible to the senses, like water freezing down into ice, right? There is no matter. Amazing that the quantum science actually supports the woo-woo manifestation speak. And I think the work of Joe Dispenza is really powerful here. He talks a lot about learning to harness and to elevate your energy so that you become less matter and more energy. And we've all felt that. I think my introduction to energy and understanding the power of energy in my own body has been through 20 years of fairly consistent yoga practice. I've been practicing various vinyasa styles, often heated yoga. I love Bikram yoga, but that kind of flowing, fairly intense vinyasa style yoga has been a mainstay for my mental and emotional health for the best part of 20 years. And when I was grappling with really significant health challenges and feeling very constricted in my body, I can remember describing it as I would feel like there was a kind of inner fragility and this hard shell cracked on the like mud that had dried on the outside and that was constricting and constraining me and holding me together, but not in a way that really enabled me to shine. And I would go to a yoga class and I would move and I would sweat and I would flow that energy through my body, and afterwards it would feel like there's no armor cracking around my body. It's like my skin is permeable and there's this like golden light radiating out from within. This is my very rudimentary understanding of energy practices in my 20s when I started really getting into yoga. And of course, that's what yoga is all about, is unifying the mind and the body and the spirit and shifting the energetic circuits within our body. So I think it's really interesting to see the science and the spirituality converging. And as I've said before, I'm always looking, when I'm speaking about a subject, I'm always looking for the different perspectives, like different fragments and different perspectives which point to the same underlying themes, because I think that's where the juice is, that's where the magic is, that's where the wisdom and the truth is. And so manifestation is something that I think we all would do well to understand better. And how amazing that Einstein's theory of relativity actually shows that the whole universe is made of energy. I really didn't understand that until recently. So hopefully that's offers some insight to you as well. While the whole universe is made up of energy, and while these practices to cultivate and increase and circulate our own energy and to align ourselves with our highest vision and our highest timeline, all of these kind of soft practices, I would say, are really valuable. But I think there's a bit of a gap in this soft femme movement where it's a lot of talk about manifestation and just set your vision and, do a lot of dancing and you'll magically create this reality. I've been working with entrepreneurs for a long time and I've built a number of businesses, and there is also another element that's required to this. It's not just about sitting back and dream it until it becomes a reality. There is actually hard work involved as well. The advice of my parents, and I come from a fairly risk-averse family where my parents were not entrepreneurs or business owners, and there was really an ethos of hard work, like a good Presbyterian work ethic. And I'm so grateful for that. It's really served me well. It's more this masculine energetic, I suppose, of just putting your head down and getting the work done. And there's some great books on this. There's the concept of the adversity quotient, AQ. So we know about IQ and EQ. There's also AQ, which is a term coined by a man called Paul Stoltz in the 90s. I think he wrote this book, 90s, 2000s, around then. And this book really speaks about how important it is to cultivate the ability to tolerate adversity. And I've seen this in high growth, rapidly changing businesses, the people that thrive in those environments are those that can roll with the punches and can tolerate change and can tolerate stress and can tolerate being in that space of uncertainty. It's a skill set that you can cultivate, and it's proved out by my own personal experience. I think if you've been leading teams through growth and change and trying to create something from nothing, we're talking about manifestation today. So when you want to bring something forward in your life or in your business, it's not just about putting the vision out there. You also need to do the work to make it happen. There's a wonderful book called Grit by Angela Duckworth, which I'd also recommend on this topic of building this resilience and the ability to get the job done. It's like the Mr. Miyagi in the Karate Kid, right? It's like wax on, wax off. You just keep doing and keep practicing and keep refining and keep improving and keep taking the steps that you need to take. We need both of these principles. And I think a lot of the manifestation world can lean too heavily on the feminine and forget the importance of the masculine. And this is something that's happening in our culture at large at the moment, and why I talk about polarity so much, because it has an impact on the self and also on our broader civilization. In the process of reclaiming the feminine, we need to make sure that we don't discredit the masculine. So we really need both, and we need both within ourselves. I mentioned non-dualism before. This is a long lineage of thinking that infiltrates different spiritual and philosophical traditions. It's basically an alternative to this very binary, black or white, this or that type of thinking that is rife at the moment. We see this with the politicization of social media, with this increasing, well, it's called polarization, but I would use polarity in a different sense in this work. So if we look at non-dualism as a philosophy that says everything is interconnected, there are no separate this or that. It's all a continuum. Within this non-dualistic world, we also have polarity. So if you think of it being like a continuum with one pole at each end and then a spectrum of experiences in between, I think this is a much more robust and helpful way to consider things like, how do we bring something forth that is not currently present in the world? How do we manifest that which we desire? We need to do the energetic practices and align ourselves with the vision, and we also need to grind it out. There is, especially if you're a creative, an entrepreneur is like inherently creative. I think it's a creative process. You got to grind it out as well. You can't just sit back and manifest. Like, you got to put in the work too. And I think we do ourselves a disservice if we forget that piece of the puzzle. These concepts of non-dualism and polarity are present in many different traditions, as I mentioned. I think the best visual representation is the yin and yang, which we all recognize. This is a Taoist symbol, a Taoist concept that comes from China. And of course, you've got the black and the white, which are different, two poles, but they're intimately connected. And the seed of the black is in the white and the seed of the white is in the black. So this is the Chinese Taoist tradition. The Indian version of that comes through with Tantra. Of course, we have Shiva, which is the masculine principle. And Shiva is pure consciousness, stillness, presence, everything that is not manifest. And Shakti is the feminine. She is energy, she is movement, she is everything that is manifest. It's a little bit confusing sometimes that these poles kind of overlap and cross over. So in the yin and yang, the yin, which is the still, dark, quieter aspect, is the feminine, and the yang, which is the fire and the movement, is the masculine. And in Tantra, it's kind of reversed. So Shiva is the stillness and the presence and the consciousness, and Shakti is the movement and the energy. So there's some variations there, but the principle remains the same. This is what polarity is all about. I speak about it a lot. I have a free 3-part training on my website if you want to dive deeper into this and other concepts related to what I call De-Armoured Leadership, which I believe is the type of brave, vulnerable, compassionate, strong, wise leadership that we need for this next phase of human civilization where everything is on the brink of collapse. If you're interested to learn more, there's a series of videos and worksheets on my website at madeleineeliza.com/leader, and I'll link it up in the show notes as well. Polarity is one of the pillars of this, so I go into that in a lot more detail, but I did want to spend a bit of time today unpacking this concept because it's so relevant to this creative process. We really need to have both aspects. I've mentioned before, I've really enjoyed, there's another book called Rocket Fuel by Gino Wickman, which speaks about the two types of leadership required for high growth organizations, the visionary and the integrator. And I have really identified as an integrator in the roles that I've had working alongside founders who usually fall under that banner of the visionary. It's big picture thinking, it's setting the vision, it's going forward, not so worried about the details, but just really moving forward and setting that vision. And the integrator is the person who kind of fills in the blanks and makes it happen and sets up the systems and the teams and all of the processes that are required to bring that vision to life. Again, there's a polarity here, and we can learn to cultivate these two aspects within ourselves as well, to hold the vision and to call forth the vision, and also to do the work, like take the aligned action to make that vision a reality. There's been a bit of criticism around the book The Secret, which is where manifestation kind of exploded into mass public consciousness, that it's a bit disconnected from reality. It's just encouraging people to just sit back and imagine everything that you'd like to create and it will magically become reality. Like, call it in, the power of magnetism. I don't think we should throw the baby out with the bathwater. I'm all about nuance. I will always argue the case for nuance here on this podcast and in my work generally. We live in a society that is becoming increasingly polarized, and you're being asked to take sides all the time, and it's very reductive. It's a very reductive, kind of lazy way of thinking. And so I'll always argue the case for nuance here. And I think that really applies to manifestation as well. We maybe don't need to go right down the path of The Secret. Maybe there's bits of that we can take. And there's bits of this very strong work ethic that's come in previous generations of, if you want to bring something to life, you better work hard to make it happen. I've had a decade of experience working in high growth startups, and I haven't met an entrepreneur who doesn't work really, really hard to create that success. It doesn't just come out of thin air. So we really need to cultivate both. And I would add that when you start taking that aligned action, it can bring up a lot of fear, and it can be very uncomfortable because you're breaking new ground. You've set this vision for the new version of yourself that's maybe scratching away at the inside, wanting to come out, and then you start taking steps down that path. Each small step that you can see leads to the next and the next. And it can feel really uncomfortable, and you're having to hold that vision for yourself. So manifestation is not all woo-woo and fluffy rainbows. You know, there's hard work involved to make something manifest in the physical world, calling it out of the shadows and into the light. And there's also a challenging inner journey to go on, to hold firm on that vision and to keep taking the action, even if it feels uncomfortable or unnatural at first. I really encourage you, if you're looking to call something new forward, whether that's a new business or a creative project or a relationship or a baby or whatever that may be, a new way of operating within your team perhaps, to look at this through a nuanced lens where we're exploring the energetic practices of manifestation, and we're also looking at what steps we need to take in the physical world to bring that vision to life.